All right, we're back. It's COMP305, Game Programming 1. And for those people who are remote, welcome. Sorry, I can't see you physically. We were going to talk a little bit about that today. I am broadcasting live here at Centennial, but there might be a time where we decide that, for now anyway, unless there's a test or something, that this will be the norm. So again, this one is from 6:30 to 8:30. I just had to set up a little bit, and the other class had to leave, so that's why we're running a little bit behind today. But there's a couple things I want to cover throughout the day today, and one of them is the hackathon. Let's start with that, right? So there's this hackathon going on. For those people who don't know, it's called Varsity Hack, right? I'm actually showing a paper here. The website to go to, if I'm not wrong, is varsityhack.ca, right? It isn't exactly around, it's not part of our course, like that I'm talking about this, but I think it's a great event, a great opportunity here. Saturday, October 3rd and Sunday, October 4th. Again, it says 9:30 a.m. start, probably until, my guess, 9:30 to 9:30 or 9 to 9 equivalent, that whole day. And it's going to be here at Centennial, right? So there's an opportunity for you to meet other developers. I know that there are people going to be coming out from, or representatives from Microsoft, perhaps, that kind of stuff, and other companies that are going to be coming out. Some developers are kind of, kind of volunteering their time. I'm also volunteering my time to make it happen. I think the great thing around this is there's an opportunity for you guys to form teams and develop something, right? So I fully recommend coming out if you're somebody who's part of the interactive gaming program or you're just a software student taking, game programming. It's definitely something to come out. I'm not sure if they're going to get people from other universities. I know that they were talking about U of T, perhaps might come out as well. But primarily, it's a Centennial thing. And again, highly encourage you to come out. If you're interested, send me an email, copy Professor Ilya, right, with your name. What I'd like to try and do is form teams up, right? So if you can be part of a team. There's all kinds of things you can do. You don't have to just be a coder. There's also someone who is great with the pitch, someone who's a great talker, great salesperson. It's also people that are going to be needed for design work, right? If you're a designer, that kind of thing. And you can work with the team, which is where the strength comes in, right? So we're looking for, again, 4 to 5 people. And there's a bunch of people coming out from the other section 1. They kind of said that they're going to come out. Different people are going to be here from COMP305 again, web game programming. I know they're interested as well. So there's all kinds of other people that Professor Prasad, Narendra, he's going to be kind of hosting some people, and then even Professor Ilya, he's been talking to, so I think it's going to really be a worthwhile event. I know that they say breakfast and lunch is totally included, so that just for that, if you want free lunch and free breakfast, that's a good reason to come out. I know it sounds silly, but now this isn't something you can just do a drop-in. It's not something you can kind of sit there and go, I'm going to come in on a Saturday for a couple hours and then see you later, right? I mean, you can do that, but you won't be able to participate. True participant has to be in here for the whole day, dedicate the weekend. So if you're someone who works, who has a job, that job thing, right? And you can't come out, please don't sign up. This is for someone who's who can dedicate, Saturday and Sunday, or he can get the weekend off or whatever, do this thing. I think it's a worthwhile thing for you guys. If you guys are indie developers, or if you again, you want to build up your resume, great opportunity for you guys, and I fully endorse it. Okay, so please sign up. Don't wait. There's only 10 days left. What I will try and do is organize a little meeting. Whoever is interested, maybe we'll fill up the room, and then kind of organize ourselves into teams, people that you're going to be working with, so you're not working alone. All right. So this is a team effort. You can come in, and there's apparently some prizes. And they're looking for things like developer, designer, pitcher, business person, all kinds of different people, different kinds of roles. And if you don't have a team, if you ended up not having a team, I know they'll probably put you together into a team for October 3rd and 4th. Okay, so if you guys, anyone's not interested or can't come out, please put up your hand. If you can't come out or you're not interested in the hackathon, let me know. If you're interested, right, and you can come out, send me an email, copy Ilya on it, Professor Ilya. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody there. Honestly, it's a worthwhile thing if you're part of the interactive gaming program. Any questions on that? right? Now, again, it's not mandatory. It's not part of our program, but I'm encouraging you guys because it's going to be a great event. It's a good learning opportunity for everybody. All right, Varsity Hack. That's October 3rd and 4th. Cool, so that's my plug-in for them. Let's get to the real meat and bones of why we're here today. So I've got a couple assets, and I put them up on GitHub. If I should go into GitHub here. So you can grab them off GitHub for what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be building a bit of our, I'm just going to go into, and it's under Centennial College. If you go look under Centennial, I go Centennial College, right? There's a couple of repositories I made. I'm going to remake this one, this COMP305 mail pilot demo, a bit for you, right? But at the end of the day, the one you want to go to is this one, MP Assets. So if you can go to Centennial College, so github.com/Centennial College/MP Assets. That's really cool. That'll give you the information you need, the assets you need for today's game. All right, so we're going to build out a 2D game together, starting off with these assets, MP assets. So go grab them. If you have GitHub already, you can certainly fork it if you want to try and doing that. So it'll make your own copies into your own repository. And you can always download the zip file. That might be the easiest way. Just download the zip, and you'll get the same assets that I have, so we can work on it together, right? Now, I gotta give you some feedback or background around this. The game we're gonna make, Mail Pilot, is the same game that I've made from 2011 in different platforms. I've done it in, I've done it on Python, right? With Pygame. I've done it with on Android. I've done it with a Starling framework on ActionScript 3. I do it with JavaScript on web game programming, and others. I'm probably forgetting the other ones that I've been doing it as well, but I'm pretty much trying to hit every platform. I've done it on iOS, right? And then why am I doing the same game over and over again? Not because I'm in love with MailPilot, by the way, because the learnings that you get from one carry over to the other, right? It's exactly the same. Really, at the end of the day, the idea of games and game making, right? When you start doing a 2D game, it's easy to translate your skills and your process from one system to the other. So that way, you might have seen this. If you actually look back at my videos, you'll see MailPilot on Python. You'll see MailPilot on ActionScript. You'll see MailPilot with Blender, right? I've tried it in 3D. I've done it in 2D. I've done it with iOS and Android. It's all there, right? But the great thing about this is it gives you a kind of a view of how to put together this game, right? So download this MP asset stuff, right? And then from there, we'll start, okay? Anyone not able to access this stuff, again, it's on GitHub, right? So while you guys are doing that, let me bring up what the game is going to look like. And I've kind of I'm going to start off really slow, but I'm going to kind of put up this, I've got a Unity version of this game that I've kind of been working on. It took me about a day to put it together, right? And let me show you what the output looks like right now, right? I'm just going to play this thing out. All right, so, and one day it'll start. I'm trying to do everything at once here. Whenever you're, whenever you play a game and you're trying to record everything, it creates quite a load on the system. Let me see if I can get this done. It's actually not running right now, which is very surprising. But that's okay, because that's how we roll in this place, right? How about this? How about we bring up our scene? That's why it's not running. There it is. This is what the scene looks like. Again, you notice there's lives, there's a background, there's a score, there's a little plane, and he's gonna. The idea here with MailPilot that I've been and I got this from again when I was doing it in Python. And then I've kind of developed it from there. So let's take a look at what this thing does. If I run it, right, you got a bit of, you can run around, you can pick up some coins, and if he runs into a cloud, he explodes, right? So very neat, a little bit of a coin. Again, I put this together in about a day, but then again, remember, I have all the assets, right? And, oh, see, I died there. And there we go. And if you notice, if I die enough times, one more time. Let's back up more times. One more time. It goes 0. I should be dead here. The game should stop, not go to -2, -3. So there's still some pieces of it that I haven't finished, right? But the idea here is that we're going to start building this thing today. So it's a 2D game. If you haven't started your assignment number 1, right, which is due next week, Friday, right? Guys, please get on this. This will be a great chance to start for you. I'm going to do it in a slightly different way because they do it one way on the tutorial. I want to give you another way of doing it. Both ways are valid if you're going to do your game. Okay, so that's what we're going to build, and there's some tools that we need to eventually get to building it. Let me just close this down. One of them that I highly recommend if you're someone who's going to do gaming, both on different platforms. Let's say, for example, if you're also part of my COMP307 class, web game programming, or if you just are somebody who's going to continue gaming and doing 2D games and textures and all that kind of stuff, there's a great tool that I recommend called Texture Packer. I highly recommend it. It's kind of become my de facto standard when I do 2D stuff. It allows you to create a sprite sheet from different sprites. We'll talk about what sprites are. Think about sprites as different images. You mash them together into your sprite sheet, and you create one texture as opposed to loading up multiple files. Why do you think that's a good thing? Why do we use Texture Packer as opposed, or something like that, to create one sprite sheet as opposed to loading up multiple files? What's the advantage? Anybody? How about the guys over there who are quiet working on something else? Why do you think it's an advantage to using a sprite sheet over individual files? Why?
Because you can cut up the sheet into individual animations. It's easier to string together your animations.
It's easier to stream together animations, and also from a resource perspective, it's lighter on resource loading. If I'm going to grab from the file system and load up my stuff, I want to do it once, or as few times as possible. Let's put it that way, right? So sprite sheets are a great way to compress our resources and lighten the load in terms of how we load up things like textures and bitmaps, bump maps, all that kind of stuff, right? Normals. It allows us to kind of compress those things. So Texture Packer is a really cool program to do that. And it also the company still makes also Sprite Illuminator, which is another kind of program that allows you to do normal maps if you want to do bump maps and normal maps. Great way of doing that. That's another piece to it. Each piece costs, of course. But the main one for the first one is only $55 or in thereabouts. I think it's worthwhile. We don't really have a book for this course we follow. Like, it's recommended, but there's no requirement. So I think if you haven't bought, if you want to, if you have some money left over to buy resources for the course or materials, this is definitely one I highly recommend if you're going to be making 2D games. Physics Editor, again, is a 2D editor that allows you kind of to create colliders for 2D, and again, for across different platforms. Cool, not really that useful for us since our colliders are made in Unity, but definitely these two, Texture Packer and Sprite Illuminator, very, very cool and useful tools. Highly recommend Texture Packer. That's like a must if you're going to be doing some stuff with, again, with 2D. Let me show you what that looks like. So because I've got Texture Packer here, and again, some of you may try to get it in other ways. Don't do it. I think you'll find you're not going to get the latest version, and also it may not work properly for you. Not worthwhile, and it's not a very expensive program. And you want to support people that make this kind of stuff. It's also the way what you want to focus on. So if you notice right now, there's outputs for Easel.js and Create.js from an HTML5 and CSS perspective, and using JavaScript. You can make a sprite sheet for Cocos 2D, which is that old game framework. Unity, of course, is what we want. It supports SpriteKit, Sparrow Starling for ActionScript 3, if you're one of those kind of people, and Engine for Android, and many others. Okay, even Unreal, if you're an Unreal Engine person, right here. So for Paper 2D, so it kind of supports different export platforms, which that's why I highly recommend it. I think it's a good tool. It's better than using Flash or Photoshop if you want to make sprite sheets with those tools. Lots easier to do it with this. Now, if you're used to using Unity, I'm just going to exit this one. You might say, well, hold on, Unity's got kind of a sprite sheet editor built in. Well, yeah, but nowhere near as powerful as this, and that's why it's a great companion. to Unity, and you can certainly get it. I mean, once you download and install Texture Packer, right? You need a way of getting it working on with Unity, and there is a kind of a free importer. It's called Texture Packer Importer, right in the Unity store, that allows you to use your Texture Packer program in order for you to create things like normal maps and all that kind of stuff. So again, highly recommend you download and install Texture Packer and the Texture Packer Importer from the Unity Asset Store. Okay, that's a tool that we all can use. All right, so that's that. I wanted to cover that. Any questions around this? And I really haven't pushed you to use too many tools that are for pay-for tools, but this is definitely one of those tools that is worthwhile. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into this Unity stuff. So everyone's got the MP assets downloaded, or you've got access to them. Is anyone having a problem down? Because we need to use this in order for us to move forward. Okay, let's launch Unity. Okay, and we're going to start a new project. So let me just get to Unity first. Here's Unity. Now I've already done this piece, COMP305 mail pilot demo in the morning, or sorry, in the afternoon, early afternoon. Now we're doing it 6:30, 8:30. I'm going to do it again. I'm just going to rename it a different file. So I'm not going to get rid of this one. For those people who are working on it with me in, section 2, or I think it's section 2. This one is for section 1. We'll make another one. So let's put new. And we'll call this kind of a similar, we'll give it a similar name. So we'll say COMP305, right? And we'll say mail pilot demo, right, for section 1. So we'll say section 1, right? Because you guys are section 1, yeah? So a little bit different. I'm going to choose 2D, and if you're using Unity 5, that's cool. If you're using Unity 4, the system in front of you and the school computer, it's going to look slightly different than this, all right? We're not going to import any asset packages, right? Although, if you look through here, if you notice, there's all kinds. Like, for example, the Texture Packer Importer. Once you've downloaded and installed Texture Packer before, the Texture Packer Importer is something you can totally add again and again. I'm not going to do that here because I'm going to do it without first, and then near day 2, when we get to day 2, I'll use the Texture Packer Importer and show you what the advantages of that are. Okay, so let's create this project. I'm just going to put it on my desktop under Unity projects. We're just going to make COMP305 mail pilot demo section 1, and I'm also going to create one of your own a second repository on GitHub where you can work with me. I'm going to do some stuff, and if you want to keep along, I'm going to be able to create this where you can follow along. Okay, so let's create the project. And before we create this project on GitHub where we make a repository, I'm going to ask you the same kind of questions asked earlier in the day, which is, what do you think we got to do first? What are the first thing we got to do with when we first start a project? The very first thing you do. That's one thing you could do. I think creating the folder is definitely a good start, but I would definitely save you want to save your scene, right? So in order for you to save your scene, you need the folders, right? So let's make the scene folder first. So I'm going to right click here. And again, I'm using my layout, if you notice, is kind of a 2x3 that's slightly different. I've got an animation level, a console, and a scene. You can certainly choose the layout that you like the most. This is one of my favorite layouts, okay? So again, let's create the folder. So I'm going to say create folder. I'm going to create the first folder. It's going to be called scenes with an underscore. And remember, I use the underscore methodology just to so it bubbles up to the top. Okay, and right there, I'm going to kind of I'm going to save our scene. So I'm going to say File, Save Scene, and then from here, I'm going to swim up to where the scene is located, which is under Scenes. Right now, yours may look differently. If you're using a Windows machine, I'm using a Mac, but it's very similar. I'm going to save my scene that I'm going to call Main in the Scenes folder. So here we go. So here's my main, right? Okay, cool. So I've got my scene saved. I think it's a great place to create all the rest of my folders, right? So let's go back out to the root, and let's create some of the folders. One of them that I'm going to make from the get-go is going to be called underscore scripts. And again, I'm using the underscore because I want my scripts to bubble up to the top. Scripts and scenes are the two that I'm going to probably use the most, right? So this is scripts. I'm going to make also another folder called sprites. I'm going to put my stuff in. I did a little differently in the morning. I'm also going to make another folder called prefabs. We're going to use that later on, right? And another folder called materials. I have materials. Maybe another folder called textures, because those are also some other things we can put in there. And then maybe another folder called audio, where we're going to keep all of our audio. And one more called fonts. So turn the lights down a little bit so you can see. So why do you think it's a great idea to put together, to format your scenes? Why do you think it's a good idea to do this, or to format your structure like this? Any ideas? Guys, I'm looking for an activity. I could do this at home and have none, right? So tell me why you think it's a great idea. Let's go to the second. What's your name? Venkatesh. Is that the name? Tell me why you think it's a good idea to make your structure, your scene structure, or your game structure first. Why is it good?
It's just like the first step where you want to make an idea of what all you want to include in the game.
Okay. What do you want to include in the game? It's kind of the first step. You know what? For me, what it is, like I said earlier, this is kind of a review from last week. It's super important we do this because for two reasons. One, once we set up our structure, we have locations for where we're going to put everything, right? It helps us keep organized. Organization when it comes to game development is super important. It doesn't matter whether you're doing in JavaScript or whether you're working on Unity with C# or something else. You want to organize yourself. It's really important. That's the reason why we do it. Okay, so that's the first thing. The first thing is organize our project. Okay. Next piece is this. If you notice on the left-hand side, I've got a scene window, right? A scene window. I'm just going to expand these as much as I can here. I'm a different resolution than I was this morning. And I've got a game window, right? Scene window and game window. Notice underneath the game window, it says standalone 1024 by 768. That's not the resolution of my game. My game is going to be 640 by 480, the old arcade standard, okay? The old standard we use on a Commodore 64, in fact. Right, 640 by 480. That was like our old way of doing things. Maybe I'm even going further back. So how do I change that? So if you notice where it says standalone here, we're going to do there's a little pull down. So pull it down for me. Again, guys, we kind of do this together. This is a great way of doing these things together, right? And if you notice, I've already kind of established. I created a new one. You can use that plus sign here. And if you notice, you can give it a label. I called it Mail Pilot. I've already done this from this morning. Well, you can decide the resolution is 640 by 480, right? Make your own little preset, if you will. I've already done that. And when I press OK with the name here, I can call it Mail Pilot. I've already done it, but anyways. If I press OK, then I get this. I get this little preset. So I'm going to click on this preset now. So instead of it being 1024 by 768, I've got my own preset for Mail Pilot, which I'm going to click on. So you notice my preset's now changed to 640 by 480. That means my screen resolution is defaulting to that. I want to create a pixel perfect game. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to reset my resolution. The second thing to note is, hey, I've got some build targets. Whenever you kind of build out a game, you have to decide what you're building it for. Is it for PC or Mac? Am I doing it for iOS or Android? What am I doing it for? You can do it for anything and all of those platforms if you want. Well, let's go to File, and let's go to Build Settings, right? And underneath Build Settings, if you notice, there's a little Unity symbol next to PC, Mac, and Linux standalone. That is your default build. That's where the target is going to be, right? Okay, so there it is. Notice that the architecture is x86. You can also make it 64-bit only or universal, whatever you choose to make, right? I could also target the web player. That's one thing I could do, right? Or iOS. You notice there's all kinds of other options here. Let's target the web player. Let's look at the web player. Click on the web player and then click Player Settings. If I click Player Settings, on the right in the inspector, you'll see that my default screen width is 960. That's not cool. It's got to be 640 by 480. I kind of set it there too. What I want to try and do is kind of keep the same for all the build settings. And if you notice, there's also PC. Here's my PC, Mac, and Linux. Here it is for iOS. Here it is for Android. And if you notice, it kind of gives me different options. If I want to make only a portrait game, portrait only, I don't want it to do landscape. Right now, it's auto rotation is on for both iOS and Android, right? I can also target HTML5, and if you notice through the WebGL wrapper, right? So that's another option. You can choose that, and there's others. I'm not going to go into the Samsung TV settings, right? But there's other builds here. There's also, if you get the professional version, you can build that for the Xbox 360 and Xbox One. There's the PS3, PS Vita, PS4, Windows Store, Windows Phone 8, all kinds of stuff that's in here, and there's going to be more and more as we go forward. They're going to continue to update Unity for that. Okay, so we're not. I just wanted to show you this. This is how we target our build. We're not going to do a build right now. I'm just going to show you where to set it up. But my game is set up for 640 by 40. That's the first thing I need to do. Okay, part 2. I need to import my assets. So again, there's a couple ways to do that. You can certainly use the menu, but I'm going to do it through my my file explorer. In your case, it'll be the same thing for. Again, I'm using the Finder, or you're using File Explorer on Windows. So let me target this. So mine's on desktop under Unity projects. And then under Unity projects, I have our project, which is Mail Pilot Demo Section 1, right? That's where it's going to go. So I can certainly drag and drop it in there. But where I really have everything is under MP Assets. MP Assets is where I just told you guys to grab everything, right? So let's start off with our audio. Can I import OGG files? Who knows what OGG files are? Anybody? OGG Vorbis, right? That's what they are. So OGG Vorbis is an open source format for music and audio, right? So I want to drag and drop these ones by selecting them in your File Explorer or Finder if you're on the Mac, and dragging them into your local folder here in your project, like this. I'm going to drag it into my audio files, right? And when you do that, if I click on audio, you notice that they take on a bit of a different shape. So if I click on my different objects to hear them, I can kind of pull up my previewer here. Here's my preview. And if I press play, that's what it sounds like, okay? Yeah, that's my engine sound. Here's my thunder sound. Oh, this is cool, man. Yeah, retro gaming, right? And here's my yay sound, right, when I pass over an island, because I'm going to make a mail drop, right?
Yay.
So that's my game. Those are my three assets, right? Simple stuff, yeah. Sure you are, right? You just can't hear them on your machine in front of you because you have no output. Yeah, you can. You can drag and drop it, yeah. But you have to open up your project. And again, you can drag and drop. The other way you can do it, you can certainly, if I want to import, another way to do it is if I want to import my sprites. So here's my sprites. And I can right-click and click import new asset. Right, here it is. Take a look at this new import new asset. This is the other way to do it. So there's two ways. One is I kind of showed just dragging and dropping in the morning. We'll just do it the other way because you're asking. I go to MP Assets, and I'm going to go to Sprites. And if you notice, there's a bunch of sprites here. I'm going to select them all, right? And or I can, but one at a time. I can only do one at a time here. So one of them is my cloud PNG. I'm going to click Import. And if you notice now, it comes across. Here's my cloud PNG. I'll do it again. So I'm going to kind of import new asset, island, import new asset. That's why it's pain in the ass, right? Ocean. Import new assets, plane, and for the rest, just because I'm lazy, I'm just going to drag and drop the rest. So kind of a combination of both. Hey, here's something. I got a few plane assets. I got like plane, and then plane 1, plane 2, plane 3. What do I have more than one plane? Anybody? Well, here's something you can look at. If I look at plane 1 or plane 2, what I can totally do is do a little bit of animation, right? I can do frame flipping animation. If you notice on the front of the plane, the propeller moves like this, right? It's like 3 frames. That's all I'm doing. 1, and then you can do that. I won't do it right now, but by the end of this tutorial series, we'll do a little bit of an animation too, to include a little plane animation, page flipping animation. All right, so that's our sprites, right? And I also want to include my fonts, right? Now we'll just do the drag and drop trick for this one as well. So let's go to fonts. We'll drag and drop this over into the fonts folder. So there we are. Doc 51 is what I'm looking at. And the font itself has, again, different options, and we're going to kind of focus on that a little later. All right, so that's the font. We've got our scripts, which we're going to make in a second, and we've also got our audio and our sprites. This is our sprites. Okay, so the kind of game that I want to make right before I upload to GitHub, the kind of game I got to make is I want to make a pixel perfect kind of game. I don't want to make the kind of game that we saw in the tutorial online. That's a little bit different, right? Pixel perfect means I want my camera to match up with, you know, my game world, right? So that I can choose a resolution, right? Sometimes it's important for us to try and do a resolution specific game if we want to match it up with a particular device, right? So we're going to do it slightly different than you saw in the tutorial. I'll give you another way of doing it, right? Doesn't mean that the tutorial's invalid or not right. I like what they did, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. Okay. This is a great time for us to save our first piece. I'm going to kind of save my scene. And I'm going to go into my terminal window. I'm going to go swim into where we have to go because I'm going to go CD desktop. And in my desktop, I have my Unity projects. And inside my Unity projects, I have this mail pilot demo for section 1. So COMP305 mail pilot demo for section 1. There we are. Oops. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a GitHub repository here. So I'm going to make this a Git repository by saying git init. That's what does it, right? Then I'm going to say git add dot, which adds all my files and folders to the repository. It's just a local repository. Again, think about a repository as an extra piece of information or for me to keep track of my file changes, right? Then I'm going to do a commit, which is like a snapshot. Git commit -m. I'm going to say my initial commit. That's what this is. Okay, there it is. So it kind of orders all the files that I've included in my assets and so on. And now what I need online is I need to create a Git repository online that I can sync up to. So let me do that. I'm going to click the plus button here. And again, if you subscribe to Git, it's free. I'm going to choose Centennial College where it's going to go. And I'm going to make a new repository, COMP305. And that's going to be mail pilot demo. Should give me an X, right? Try to type it right. I did not. Mail pilot demo should give me an X, but I'm going to make it -section 1, right? So section 1 is for your section. The other one is for the section, okay, that I did this morning, right? And I'm going to click Create Repository. Now, right now, it's empty, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, copy it to my clipboard, right? I'm going to go back to terminal and set it up, this repository online, set this up as my, my remote. And let's try that again. I'll be okay. What I meant to do is do one of these. So I get my Git remote here. It's just a long name. I'll be all right. Let's try that again. Oof. That's what happens when you're working at night. All right, and then I'm going to do a git push -u origin master. Now, for people who've been with me for a while and done other courses, this isn't new. If it's new to you, that's okay. I'm going to refresh. Here it is. And if you notice now, if you want to go keep up with me, if I'm going too fast, for our little demo we're doing here, which is going to be slightly different than the one I did during the day, if you want to keep up, you can certainly go to Centennial College under the github.com and then COMP305 mail pilot demo section 1. So for your specific GitHub repo. So if you want to follow along with me. For those people kind of watching live right now when I'm doing my broadcast, you could certainly follow along with this one as well. Okay, so you've got my up-to-date one. And this will give you everything that I have here, but I wanted to build it out for you from scratch. All right, so that's part 1. So part 1 is getting our assets in play. How do we get those in? Now I want to start building it out with you. The first thing I want to make is, what's the first asset you think is a good idea to make? I want to make my first asset, right? So my first game object. I've got my main camera, and here's something to note from my main camera. If I take a look at my main camera here, if I go to scene, and right now it looks flat, yeah? Take a look at my main camera. So I scroll out, it looks like a big square or polygon, right? But if I click the 2D object here, it becomes 3D and looks like a big box, right? So this is what the actual camera looks like. It's really long, as an example, right? That's what it looks like right now. If I kind of move it around in 3D space, you can see that where the camera is, how I can control the camera, what it's looking at. Just a big, long view of what it looks like. Okay, that's the camera. right? If I go back to 2D, bam, it becomes flat again, right? So here's something to note. Right now, my camera is set up at -10. It doesn't really matter where I put my camera. The Z coordinate, because my camera is in orthographic mode, that's one thing to note. Take a look over here. Projection is orthographic, right? My size is 5. So if I want to move my camera way up here, and I change my size from 5 to 1, it becomes really small, right? If I go back to from 2D, do you see that there's a difference? It looks almost the same. The only difference is that 2D one, if I go from on the 3D side here, from 1 to size 2, look what happens. It becomes fatter, right? If I go to 3, it becomes fatter still. But the way I've done it is I made it 5. So let's go 5. Right? So, and again, you can also, for people who care about the camera and how it's going to look at things, right? You can also scale it up here. You can change the scale of the camera just like you would any other object. So if I want to say, I want to make my Y coordinate 2, right? You can certainly scale it so that the Y coordinate is stretched in game view, right? Again, I've created a 640 by 480 view. You have to change yours to what it means to you. I'm going to move the camera back to 1, the scale of 1. So if you notice now, this is the game view. This is what I actually see when I'm playing the game. This is what I see. The scene view, going back 2D, is what I see when I set up my assets in the game. Okay, so that's what I'm seeing right now. So scene view, scene window, game window, console window, right? All right, so that's kind of some of those, right? Now what I want to do is I want to add another game object. What game object do you think I should add next? Huh? Light. Normally I would say yes, but here in a 2D we're using sprites, and we're going to do a little bit differently than last time, right? In fact, let us add a new game object by right-clicking in the hierarchy. That's how I'm going to do it this time. And I'm going to say, instead of a 3D game object like this, a primitive, we're going to choose 2D object sprite. Let's do this together, guys. So 2D object sprite. Now, if you notice, my new sprite, I need to rename this thing, and the first sprite I'm going to create is going to be called my player sprite. So it's going to be called player, so I'm going to click once, call player, right? Here it is. And if you notice, right, my player doesn't have, there's nothing associated with it, right? Because if you notice here on the right-hand side in the inspector, I've got a transform object. Here's my transform object. And on the right here where it says my sprite renderer, I got none for sprite. What do I do? How do I link my sprite to my player? Any ideas, guys? What do you do? Yeah, you drag it, man. You got it. So I'm going to take my plane, not the plane number 1 or 2, 3, just the plane without a number. I'm going to drag it into where it says my sprite, and it's going to turn blue. See where this turns blue? When I do that, my plane now is associated, my plane sprite's associated with my player. Okay. Let us do a couple things here. Let us focus in. So how do I focus in my game view? My scene window. How do I focus in on my plane? F. There's my plane. This is what it would look like. Do it with me, guys. So you should see this. Okay, so again, if you notice, this is where my plane is, right? Hey, here, look, if you notice on the right here in my inspector, my plane sits untagged. I can choose the player tag to associate with my player object, right? That's kind of a smart thing to do, right? So player object. I noticed something else. My order in layer is 0, right? 0. We're going to talk about order in layer. You can remember when I do my orders, if I think about my plane, how does this is what it looks like in a 2D mode, but what does it really look like in 3D? Let's take a look, because remember, Unity is a 3D engine. If I click the 2D button, it goes like this. Whoa. Look at this. It looks like a, and forgive the pun here, plane, right? Like a 2-dimensional plane, right? If I look at it from both sides, it's identical, but it's perfectly flat. Yeah. I use the Alt or Option key, right, on the Mac, and you press left button. So I'm holding down, or else you can, if you see over here how you, I'm moving from the, right now I've got the W key selected. What key do you need to do to move it with the hand? What's the key sequence up here? Does anyone remember? Kind of talked about it in one of my sessions. Come on, guys. It's not just a watch thing. What keys do I use to activate these buttons up here? Shortcuts. It's Q for the hand, W, E, R, T, right? Just the QWERTY keyboards up here on the top, right? So if I touch Q, I got the hand, and if you notice, I can spin around, I can move it around anywhere I like, right? If I click this one, W, then I can move it physically with the little manipulator arms, which is also called the widget, right? Or the gadget, right? So certainly I can move it around here, this little thing, right? But these manipulator arms kind of move it in different dimensions, like on the x-axis or y-axis or even z-axis. Now again, we're doing a 2D game, so if I click 2D, it's going to go back to 2D, this flat view, which makes the outline look like it's this is the bounding box. Okay, listen to what my words are. The bounding box, when it comes to collisions, we'll need to change this for my game object, right? So it's just a square box. Now look what it looks like in game mode. Whoa, that's really far away. How come it's so far away? Because there's two problems, okay? And I want you to take very close attention, pay very close attention to this. My sprite, when I imported it into Unity, came in, if I click on my plane sprite, take a look, clicking on my plane sprite here, came in with pixels per unit is 100. That means every unit, right, because I'm playing a 2D game, right, which remember units in Unity are usually in meters, right? Each meter is equivalent to 100 units, 100 pixels, right? That isn't cool. I want to make pixel perfect game, and for my plane, it's got to be a 1-to-1 comparison. So I got to change this pixels per unit to 1. That's number one, what I need to do. The second thing is, if you notice my filter mode is bilinear, I need to change this for this asset, and actually for every asset, to point. Once I've done that for my plane, I need to apply the changes. This is just to my, if you notice, I'm pointing at my sprite in my assets, not my game object, my sprite. I need to click apply. When I do that, oh, whoa, what's going on here? How come it's so huge now in my game, right? Well, there's a couple reasons why this is so huge, right? I'm using pixel perfect resolution, and my scene, if you look at my scene, it's really big too. I'm just going to kind of pull out here. It's massive now. It's like, it looks really, really big. Why? Because my camera is not using pixel perfect. My camera is looking at this as a size of 5, right? That's what my camera, how my camera's seeing it. This is the preview of what my camera sees. So what do I need to do, right? Remember, the bigger the size, right, of my camera, the smaller this thing is, right? Let's take a look. So what if I move to 10, right? Does that do anything? How about 100, right? Let's take a look and see what that looks like on the game. So this is what it looks like here. Let's move that back to 5. 5, massive. But if I change my camera to 100, right, it makes the plane look a little better. What am I doing with the camera? Let's take a look at it from 2D so you understand what's happening. Here's my camera, and now I've changed the size of it, panning around here, if you notice, to 100, right? What if I make it something like 200? Becomes even wider, right? Hey, what is this looking like in the game? Almost perfect. We can't tell if this is pixel perfect right now. You know why? We have no comparison what 640 pixels is on for this size here. We don't know what 640 pixels looks like. Or do we? We do. We have an object that's 640 pixels wide. What could it be? Well, it's the ocean. Our ocean, if you notice, my ocean is 640 by 1440. Well, that means that this way, up and down, right? It's 1440 pixels, which means it's probably 3 of these screens high, right? Why do I need to make my ocean 3 screens high, right? Because I want to scroll my ocean. I want to scroll from the top. It's going to hit the bottom and then refresh, reset back to normal. So it's going to look like it's moving, just like the game I showed you in the beginning of my preview, right? So that's what I want to do with my ocean, right? So I know it's 640 pixels wide. So it's a great way of comparing how big my ocean is going to be. Okay, so let's add another object, another game object to my hierarchy. We're going to make this called ocean. So right click. I want to create another 2D object. And notice how I'm already got, before I do this, I've already got my ocean highlighted. See that? Watch what's going to happen if I do another 2D object and say sprite. Bam! Well, my sprite now, my new sprite, has my ocean already associated to it because I had already clicked on ocean when I created my new sprite. I'm just going to rename this thing as ocean. And if you missed that, you can always just click on the ocean and drag and drop the ocean into here, into the blue area. Right, that'll do too. So now my ocean is my sprite. But wait, it doesn't appear on my screen. How come, how come? Well, because my ocean sprite isn't 1-to-1, right? My ocean sprite is 100 pixels per unit. I can't have that. I got to reduce that to 1. I got to change my filter mode from bilinear to point no filter. That's the one I want. And now my ocean is going to be able to be seen, but let me go back to 2D view here for you guys to see this. If I click on my ocean, right, and I can see that if I apply the changes, I can see my oceans right here. Wait, I'm almost perfect. Here's my camera view. If you see my camera view, but my ocean's a little bit bigger. And you know what? This is something neat too. My ocean is at kind of this funny position. You know, it's at 0.25 minus 0.303 and 0.34. What should I do with any game object that comes into the game? First thing I should do, if it's not 0, 0, 0, what should I do? Zero it out. Yeah, reset it. There's two different ways. I could physically say 0, 0, 0, or I can use the gear to reset the ocean back to 0. Right now, there's a problem here. Look at my z-axis. My z-axis is 0. My player, my z-axis is 0, but I can't see my player anymore. How come? Because they're on the same order in layer, right? My player's got 0. Think about this as a list, a stacking of cards, right? My player is a card, and if I put him down and I put my ocean on top of him, you're not going to see the player. But if I put my player on top of my ocean in a stacking order, right, then I can see him. So what I need to do is my ocean starts at 0. My player then should move to 1. If I click that, my player appears. Right? So all I've done is change the order in layer property of my sprite for my player only from 0 to 1. And they can both have the same 0. The Z coordinate can still be 0 on both. It's just a stacking order. And if I was to look at it in 3D mode, it looks like this. Here's 3D mode. So I've got an actual object. So I'm going to spin around here. And if you notice, my player and my ocean are embedded one on top of the other. You can't tell, though, because, you know, again, the stacking order is a little bit different, right? But my player is physically on top. It's kind of, it almost looks like it's embedded in the ocean. For us, when we go to 2D mode, it looks like it's hovering over with that, you know, false shadow we got there. In game, it looks like this. That's the game mode is. It's not quite 640 by 480, and you can tell that by this. I've got a bit of a margin here on the left and the right there, and if I look at my ocean, right, it is 640. So I know I can compare. My camera then is a little bit smaller than what it should be. How do I make it pixel perfect? When if I click on my camera, I see that it's 200. Let's think. And my height's very close, and my height is 480. What if I made my camera half of my height in terms of number? So if I made this 240, would it snap to? Let's take a look. 240, bam. And guess what happens? If I make my camera equivalent to half my height, so my height is 480, right? Then it becomes pixel perfect. So my size of my camera now is 240, and if you notice, there's no space around my camera. It's pixel perfect. This is kind of one of our hurdles, and I took a little bit more time with this in the morning because people have to understand how to put those things together. How did I get that? You notice I was very close at 200. Let me go back to 200. So here's 200. Notice there's a little bit of space. I can keep doing trial and error, but as I approach it, let's say 210, well, it's getting closer. I could have done this, 220. That's closer. Then 230, and then it's clicking. Look, I'm getting very close. I know my height is 480. It's almost half the height. Oh yeah, that makes sense. 240, and that's what the formula is. Your camera is almost always half the height of your resolution, your screen resolution. Okay, if you want to make it pixel perfect. Okay, That's cool. So I've got my height, my plane's in the middle, which is really cool. I've got the position of my camera is perfect. And if I look at my game screen, which is what I'm going to see in game, it looks like I'm pretty good now, right? I still got an issue, right? Remember what my ocean's going to do. If I click on my ocean here for a second and I zoom out, here's my ocean. My ocean is 3 screens high, right? And I've done that on purpose. Why? Because what I want my ocean to do is start off like this. Let's move it to the top. Right? So here's my ocean. It starts off like that, and every frame, this is my script now. Think about how I'm going to do my script. It's going to move down, right? It's going to keep moving down until it hits the top of my viewport. When it hits the top of my viewport, it's going to reset to up here again to create that scrolling effect. All I'm going to do is reset. I'm not going to generate another background. I'm just going to reset the background back to the top. And it's going to create that scrolling effect for my water, like as if the water's coming at me all the time. Well, let's take a look. If you notice, the top of my screen is a rough 480. And if I basically look, listen to my thinking, 480, hold on, that's the width of the height of my screen. That's a magic number for me. That's where it should start, at 480. So let me put 480 in there. Right, and if I zoom in here, let's zoom into the bottom. I'm just going to move into the bottom here. I'm going to use my hand tool to zoom in. It looks like it's pixel perfect, right? I know people are going to get sick of me saying that, but that's truly what it is. Look here as I zoom in. There is no separation. So 480 is a magic number for us. That's where I want my ocean to reset, that number on the y-axis. I want it to go back there when it comes down. So how is it going to go? It's going to go like this. It's going to come down. There's my ocean. It's going to go down to this point, right? And then reset. Well, what's this point? Look what it looks like. It looks like minus 480. Look at that. What beautiful symmetry. 480. That's the top. And if I was to zoom in here to see the top, just to make sure that that's really what's happening here, I'm just going to pull this down and zoom in. You can see that it's pixel perfect. You're going to hate me for this. Here's the top. And there's no separation, right? So minus 480, I got to do a check. If my ocean y-coordinate hits minus 480 or greater, it's time to reset. And that's the script that I'm going to make, the first script that I'm going to make for my ocean, okay? Make sense? So my ocean is going to scroll down, then I'm going to reset it. I'm going to keep doing that over and over again for the life of our game, right? To make it look as if my plane is flying. And something I said this morning, which is also true, is remember that everything we do with game, when we do game simulation or game development, it's all smoke and mirrors, guys. It's all tricks, right? How do we trick the eye, the human eye, and the audience into thinking something's happening? How do we solve a problem with the same assets without instantiating new assets? How do I reuse what I have and reduce memory output, right? Or memory usage. It's this. It's resetting sometimes. This is one of the options. Not the only one, but one of them. So let's take a quick break. We've kind of gone into like 1 hour. And for the second hour, take 10 minutes. You guys go to the washroom and all that kind of stuff. And people who are watching can also go for water or get some food or whatever. And then we'll come back in 10 minutes. So it's like around 7:40, let's say, 7:45. And we'll continue for the rest. And we'll make that ocean move. All right, so I'm going to go back to this. And we'll meet you back in 10.